Hello, my name's Gunnar Headley. I'm back again on the gameplay developer systems team.
I am Ayannah Adegay. I am also a developer on the Gameplay Systems team.
Today, we're going to be showing you about items, custom components, and scripting. So this is a little similar to the block custom component tutorial that we did last time, but now we're going to be talking about items. So today, we're going to be making a custom leaf bag, similar to, if you remember, if you were here previously for the custom block when we made a leaf pile, we're going to now be using a leaf bag to pick up those leaf piles. So we're going to be going through a couple different ways of doing that, similar to the block. There's going to be a JSON component, there's going to be custom components in V2 for items, and we're also going to be talking about the script APIs and kind of how this all works. So before we dive into it, let's just kind of talk about what we want to do with the leaf pile. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make a leaf pile item that you can pick up, or sorry, a leaf bag that you can pick up leaf piles with. And we, of course, a bag can only have so many items in it. We want to have some way of enforcing how many items that we have in it. And then we also want to see how many leaves are in the bag. And then also, that's assuming that you want to use the item to pick up something with a block. But we also just want to be able to just, right click in the air and then toss things. We want to toss the leaves in the air. And we also want to see the leaves fly around with particles and make it nice and cute. So before we go into kind of the specifics of the implementation, let's kind of go over a little bit about how this will all be configured. So the two things to kind of keep in mind is, one, the definition in the JSON format, and then the script in the TypeScript format. If you're here for the block description, it's a similar format where we have the JSON defining the item, where that has things like the version, the identifier, and then a list of components. Components are the same idea as they are in blocks, where they have different attributes that you can modify, like the icon of it, the max stack size, things like compostable, if you want to use the composter, and then also custom component identifiers. So that is, again, similar to how it works in blocks, where you can then loop that into the leaf bag script. And then similar to how blocks work, and we'll talk about this a little later on how this is used, but you can hook up different events to the item. Things like onUseOn, which is specifically used for knowing if an item was used on a block, or onUse, which is specifically used if you're just tossing it in the air. Similar to how if you are flying with the Elytra and you use a firework, you can then use that in the air to have a speed boost. And then we'll also go through different dynamic properties and kind of other things to go through. But yeah, now let's go through the demo. And I'm going to take it away.
Yes, so we are going to go into the game. We're going to do a backwards demo. So first, I'm going to show you what we actually have. So I'm in the game, I'm at my little campsite, and I have my bag of leaves. So what I'm going to do, like we mentioned, we want to be able to pick up some leaf piles. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to scoop up some of these leaf piles, and we can see that they're disappearing and going into our bag. And then, like we mentioned earlier, we want to be able to throw the leaves. So right-clicking with use is spawning these cute little leaf particles around us. Also, we're like setting the lore. I'll go more into this when we get to the code, but the lore is what's showing us that text that says 5 out of 12 leaves remaining. And then the dynamic properties is what causes that has custom properties subtext to show up. So what if I empty my bag of leaves? If we go through and we empty all of our leaves out of our bag, it'll tell us that our bag of leaves is empty. And then if we try to place, it'll also say our bag of leaves is empty. And then if we go and pick up some more leaves, and then now we're able to place.
Ooh.
And then now our bag is empty again. And then just one more. If we fill our bag all the way up, then we'll get a notification that our bag of leaves is full. So this block had 2 height. But since our bag of leaves only had 1 space left in it, it only took that 1 top piece. So what does this actually look like in code? So here we are in our JSON. We're going to start with just looking at the bag of leaves JSON. So like we mentioned, here we're just using regular item components and then also the custom components using V2 custom components. So most of this is pretty simple. We're setting a max stack size of 1. Since we just have 1 bag, we have set our custom icon here. We have our display name, so we get the bag of leaves when we hover over our item. It's compostable, so we can compost it when we're done collecting our leaves. And then we have our 2 custom components here at the bottom. One thing that I want to emphasize is this ability to set parameters in your custom component. So what does this look like when we pop back over to scripting or to TypeScript? So let's start here, or actually let's start in the main. Here we can see how we register our two custom components. So we have our throw leaves custom component and the leaf pile interaction custom component. One thing to note is that before, with custom components v1, to register your custom components, you use the world.before events .world initialize, I believe. This has now been changed in scripting 2.0 to be system.before events .startup. So just remember that that has changed when you try to update your stuff to 2.0. Moving into the TypeScript for our throw leaves custom component, we are making use of the unuse event. So this is when we're right-clicking into the air, and this is how we throw our leaves. So this is implementing the item custom component. This is a little bit different to our leaf pile demo, where instead we just had our functions here. We've done it slightly differently, where we just put it in a class. So a few things to highlight here. We're using dynamic properties to read and set our leaf count on our item. We're using the set lore. Can I pull that up here? Let's see, it is here. We're using set lore to actually put the subtext on the item so you can actually see our count the 5 out of 12 leaves. And then another thing to note for these item events, so like the item use event and the item use on event in the leaf interaction component, the item stack that we get back from these are actually read only. So something important to note is that when you make changes to the item here, so setting the dynamic property and setting the lore, we have to go back and put the item back into the player's hand after use. So that's just to make sure our item stack is up to date. So another thing I want to call out here is the use of particles. So we have our thing here where we're using the spawn particle API, and the leaf particle we're using is actually the name that we pulled from the JSON using our custom parameters for custom components. Important thing to note that the names have to exactly match. So leaf particle here, it's leaf underscore particle, similar to in the bag of leaves, it is leaf underscore particle for them to match. And then also we have our particle here. I won't go into many details because this is about items and not particles, but there is documentation on the learning portal on how to set up your particle and make it do what you want it to do. We'll also pop into the leaf pile interaction component. This is how we're able to place our leaves and pick up our leaves. Very similar here too. We're getting dynamic properties, setting dynamic properties. And then another thing I want to call out is this on-screen display API here. This is how we get that bag of leaves is full or empty to pop up on our screen. And then otherwise, we're just replacing the block, setting the block, and then doing our usual updating the count on the item stack itself with dynamic properties. So.
And one thing to note, all of this might look like a lot of scripting here, but everything that we are showing off today is going to be provided for you at a later date, so you can play around with it as much as you like.
So, just going to do one last demo in the game. We are going to, first let's see how many, okay, so our bag is full. So we're going to go ahead and empty our bag, throw all of our leaves into the air. We're going to collect up the rest of our, oops, ooh, didn't empty it. Okay, now our bag of leaves is empty. We're gonna go and pick up all of our leaves on the campsite because we're a good camper. We want to clean up after ourselves. And then after we filled our bag, we're going to compost our bag. And now we have cleaned up our campsite.
We're so great at camping.
Yes,
I'm excited.
Thank you.
Cool, and we can go into some of the questions that we have. One from Daryl, what do you think about doing a dynamic changing of the icon item? From my understanding, I don't know if you know this better, Ayannah, I think it should be possible today.
Currently the way we would do, if you want to do that, it would be similar to how I updated the item stack after I made my changes. So you could change your item there. There's currently no direct way to take your current item stack and change its icon because that component is local to all instances of that item rather than that, or all items rather than that instance of the item. But definitely something to consider in the future. It was also something I kind of wanted to do here, to change from an empty bag to a full bag as I filled my bag.
Oh, and that actually reminds me of one thing I wanted to mention as far as the custom components goes. As we saw, that there's two different events that we use: the on use and then on use on. On use for item for just tossing in the air, and then on use on for placing it on a block. Those events that we are using are read only, meaning that you can only really read the properties of an item stack. If you wanted to say update the item or do anything else with it and set things, you'll then have to use what's called system.run. Is a way of doing that, where you can then essentially change the properties. The reason we have to do that is mainly due to how we calculate a lot of things in the tick. Essentially, if you do system.run, it'll allow us to basically set things at the end of the tick, thereby allowing us to make sure that there's no weirdness happening in between, basically, when you get the event and then when actually trying to set things.
Yeah, because some of those events run in a read-only context, and then system.run will run after you're out of that read-only context. So you can actually write stuff.
Yeah, it's a thing that we get tripped up by. I personally get tripped up on all the time whenever I try and use scripting in V2 components. Next question from MadLad. With custom components V2, is there a way to detect if a given item stack or block instance has a custom component and access its custom component parameters?
So this would be done inside of your custom component script. I'm not sure where you're trying to access, like where we're trying to do this detection from, but if we're doing it via TypeScript in the custom component class that we were using, that's where we know that we have custom components because our custom component class is being run at that time. So that's how we can tell that our item stack has a custom component, because it's running our custom component code. And then we access those custom component parameters through the custom component parameters class that we extended or made to grab the leaf particle and then use the leaf particle in that custom component.
Cool. So that's pretty much it. It doesn't look like there's any more questions, but yeah, thank you guys very much for joining us. My name is Gunnar Headley.
I'm Ayannah.
Thank you guys very much for joining us.